Okay, good evening, friends. Welcome to our third webinar. This webinar is on the biggest investment mistakes and how to avoid them. This is part two. So, the disclaimer before I start is webinar is intended to educate the investors on common investment mistakes and its impact. We request the participants to take informed decisions post this session based on their risk profile. Last month, we did the first session on the first five investment mistakes. There we covered five important, which we felt were the most important, the starting five mistakes. First one was investing without financial goals. Second one was buying traditional insurance policy as investment. Third mistake we covered was investing in highest return equity schemes. Fourth was timing the market. Fifth was buying penny stocks or stocks of lower value. So all those who missed last time's session can subscribe to our channel, which is Proficient Financial Planners. You can see there here. So you can subscribe to our channel here, and you can have a look at this video, which is here, five biggest investment mistakes, which we covered last month. And all those who missed our session before that, which was taking charge of your financial life, can also have a look at that video. Okay, the first investment mistake which I want to cover in part two is not starting investments at an early stage in life. We all know that how important it is for us to start investing, how important it is for us to start saving. But when to start is also very equally important. So not starting early can actually set us back by a huge amount of money. What we don't invest initially and don't allow it to grow can actually be a big loss for us going ahead. If I show you some calculations which goes into, in terms of delaying our investment, not starting early, how does it affect us? I'll just show you that. So this is our sixth investment mistake, apart from the five that we covered earlier, is not starting investment early in life. When you don't start investment early, you don't benefit from the power of compounding. Albert Einstein famously said that compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And who doesn't understand it, he who understands will earn it, he who doesn't pays for it. So compounding is nothing but where your principal, of course, grows, you get some interest on your principal, so your total value grows. And with years, number of years that you spend, you also keep earning interest on your interest. That's what compounding is all about. To give you a very simple example, if you're investing 5,000 rupees each month for a period of 5 years, and if that's an equity fund, if equity diversified mutual fund, approximate return at a 12% basic rate should give you about 4 lakhs in 5 years. Now, when we assume that in 5 years, if you're getting 4 lakhs, in 10 years, we should get double, around 8 lakhs? No. So, in 10 years, you get almost 3 times, 11 and a half lakhs. No, why is that? Because on this 4 lakhs, you earn interest, and on that interest, you keep earning interest. And if you take that further, that 5,000, if you continue further for 15 years, your value grows by at least 6 times, almost 24, 25 lakhs. Okay, so what we learn from here is that the more you stay invested, the better it is for you in terms of the value that you create. And for that, you need to start early. Not many of us get 20 years or 25 years of investing life. So the earlier you start, the better you are at converting your savings into a very big investment. Just imagine the 5,000 rupees which you are investing can create a corpus of almost 1 crore in 25 years. So point that I want to make here is start investing early. Even now, even if you have not started now, start now. This could be a right time for you to start. There is never a wrong time, there is never a right time. Whenever you are aware of this fact that you should start investing, you should start investing. So this is one of the first mistake which I want to cover. Start investing as early as possible. Now, what happens if you delay? If you delay investing, let me give you an example. If you're investing 10,000 rupees for a period of 30 years at a 12% return, you are investing 10,000 for 30 years. Your cost is 36 lakhs. This is your money which you're investing, 36 lakhs. At the end of 30 years, what you get is about 3 crore 49 lakhs, approximately 3.5 crores. Now imagine you decide, let me start next year, okay? Which means I will start 1 year later, which means you invest for 29 years and you don't invest for 30 years. 1 year less means you have invested 1,20,000 less. But that 1,20,000 less has resulted in a reduction of 40 lakhs from your corpus. 2 year delay. If you delay by 2 years, it results in a reduction of 76 lakhs of your corpus. And if 3 year delay, which means you didn't invest 3 lakh 60,000, it results in a reduction of 1 crore in your overall corpus. So this is the power of compounding. Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't understand it pay for it. So this is the loss that you might, I mean, I could call it an intangible loss. The more you delay, the more you will be at a loss. So keep in mind, start investing as soon as possible. Even now at this stage, if you can start, you should start. The second point that I want to cover was investing in, most of us invest in real estate. Of course, you should have one house of your own, but beyond that, when people start investing for rental income or for appreciation in property value, we have seen that in the last 8-10 years, real estate has actually not been a good investment. Now, why? I'll give you some examples. Let's take the example of a property which is costing about, let's say, 1 crore 20 lakhs. Let's assume that we are buying a flat of 1 crore 20 lakhs. We have two options. One is to buy a ready flat, a flat which is constructed and ready. Second option is to buy an under construction flat. Let us look at a ready flat. What are the costs involved when you buy a flat which is ready to be occupied? Cost of the flat is, let us say, 1 crore 20 lakhs. Down payment that one can do is around 20%, which is 24 lakhs. 96 lakh, let us assume, is taken as a loan. Then you have other costs which are stamp duty, registration, GST, legal charges, processing charges, development charges. If you buy a resale flat in a ready complex, probably you might not have to pay development charges, you may not have to pay uh, maybe parking charges also. So we can reduce about 5-6 lakhs over here. But otherwise, you are going to pay your interior cost, you're going to invest, you're going to spend money in your interior, you're going to paint your flat for at least twice in 10 years. You're going to spend money there. You're going to buy a home insurance, which is now compulsory, mandatory with your loan. And there could be other incidental expenses which might come up. Okay. Now you also get a home loan tax advantage. When you take a home loan, there is a benefit on your interest. Principal, of course, gets covered in your ATC. But on interest, after tax saving, the interest that you would pay on a 10-year loan comes to around 23 lakhs. So flat which was costing 1 crore 20 lakhs, actual money that you have invested in that flat with all these costs included along with interest comes to 1 crore 81 lakhs. The average return of average flats in Bombay in the last about 5, 6, 7 years has been about 5%. So if you take even a 6% return on your flat cost, the approximate market value, future value comes to around 2 crore 15 lakhs, which means you have made a 30 or 35 lakh. profit on your actual investment. That gets converted into a return of 1.8%. Now let's assume you're giving it on rent. You're getting on 20,000 rupees rent per month. And if the rent is increasing, let us say even at a 10% rate for next 10 years, the future rent will be around 6,20,000 after 10 years. So your return on rent is around 2.9%. So return on real estate value is 1.8% approximately if you take a loan,
अंशिका रहने दो.
and rental yield, return on your yield on your rent is around 2.9%. So your actual return that you get on your overall property investment, which are going to give as a rental flat, comes to about 5%, 4.7 to 5% max. Now with this, there are several negative points that come up. One is you are locking your money, big money, in this investment which is not liquid. You cannot sell your flat on the fly. For example, you want to sell it within a month, 2 months, difficult to do that. You can't even sell a part of the house, right? Which means that there is no liquidity. You can't even partially liquidate your flat. And third, if you sell it, there are some uh, tax liabilities that can come up if you don't invest that money in another flat or bonds. Then you might also end up paying taxes. So this does not include the tax. The calculation does not include the tax aspect also. So be careful before you invest a large amount of your money in a second flat, in a second property. Your returns might disappoint you. Now let's look at an under construction flat. Under construction flat might even cost more. Why? All the costs are similar. Whatever costs we discussed in the ready flat are the same. But additional thing what you pay is the pre-EMI interest. Okay. Till the flat gets constructed, you don't pay the full EMI, you pay EMI interest. So that can be an additional cost. Secondly, parking charges, development charges. These are the additional costs. Even GST can be an additional cost which you will pay. Okay. So immediate purchase second flat or a under construction flat will give you a return of about 4.5%, max to 5% if you give it on rent. Okay. If you look at the housing index, the price index in the last 10 years, last 8, 9 years, initially there was a growth. If you look at the real estate market from 2003 to 2010, the returns were very high. There was more than 10-15% growth each year. But after that, after steadily after 12, 13, the returns have actually started falling. The prices of properties have actually started falling. And today they are in the range of 2 to 5%. In the current scenario, I don't see the property markets rising much in the next couple of years. So keep in mind, if you have your goals very near, if you don't have too much of money to invest, then don't block your money by taking a loan in a real estate. So that's the second mistake which I wanted to cover. Don't invest in a second property for rental income for investment purposes. The third aspect which I want to cover is, you know, many people during the journey of life, of course, we start our investments, but many a times we don't have sufficient amount to invest. Why? Because we get into different kinds of loans. We have different requirements. We get into a car loan, personal loan, home loan, various kinds of loans. So I would like to today highlight two aspects here. Taking a loan is not bad, but which loan you take is important. So ideally categorize the loans as good loans and bad loans so that they will not affect your investment journey. Good loans will help you create assets. Bad loans don't help you create assets. Let me explain you with an example. Good loans are home loan, education loan, business loan, even a gold loan can come under a good loan as the last category of loan under that. Why? Because see, most of these loans help you create an asset. For example, home loan. For your first house, when you take a home loan, today the home loan interest rate is about 7.5%. You get, let us say you are in 30% tax bracket. A 30% uh, exemption on 7%, you get a exemption of about 2% from your 7%, which means you're just paying 5% interest on your home loan. Second, your home loan is going to appreciate, your home is going to appreciate. Home is an asset which will appreciate. But compare a home loan with a car loan. A car is not an appreciating asset. A car is a luxury. A car is a utility, but it's not a luxury. It's not a utility. It's not a asset. Asset value of a car keeps reducing. Every year there is a depreciation. In home, there is no depreciation, but it only appreciates by whatever percentage, but it appreciates. So when you take a loan, look at it whether the loan is giving you any tax benefits. Secondly, whether that asset is appreciating for which you have taken a loan, whether it's appreciating. So then that can be categorized as a good loan. What about an education loan? On an education loan for post graduation, for higher studies, the interest that you pay, you get a tax deduction under Section 80E, which means you're qualifying yourself, your son or daughter, whoever in the future might want to qualify themselves, want to achieve higher skills so that they can get a better pay scale, better career opportunities. An education loan also comes at about 9.5%. Imagine again when you are in 30% tax bracket, you are knocking off around 2.5 to 3% from the interest because that's a tax saving for you. So here again you pay about 6% post tax interest. So these two loans can come under good loans because you also get tax benefits and there is some benefit that you are getting here. If you are in business, a business loan might help you because a business loan you get a deduction from your overall expenses. So that actually reduces your tax. Gold loan again is among the cheapest loan because you don't you give hardly there are any processing charges and you can close your loan whenever you want. Okay. Now when we look at bad loans, nowadays we see a lot of people taking consumer loans. Personal loan is increasing by the day. Okay, and credit card of course is one of them, which is also there is a rampant increase in credit card loans also. And car loan of course is all these loans have become very common. So consumer loan, ideally, you pay for a long period of time. They may call it a zero interest, but you don't get it at zero interest. Your initial cost is increased so that it's made to believe that it's at zero interest. A credit card loan, depending upon if you're converting a purchase into a credit card loan, that loan comes to you at nothing less than 12 to 14%, and it doesn't help you create any asset. So keep in mind before you get into loans, because these loans can affect your cash flow. These loans can affect your saving and investment capacity. Okay. So if you have to take a loan for your first house, take loan for education. If you are in business, look at a business loan in case you need one. So categorizing good loans and bad loans helps you take the right steps in your investment career. This is a summary of the loans that what kind of interest rates that are charged in each of these loans. If you look at credit card loans, it could range from 14 to 20%. Personal loan can depend. The lowest can be 10-11%, but if your credit score is low, the personal loan can also come to you at 15-16% also. Consumer loans, of course, all are more. But look at a home loan and education loan. A home loan is the cheapest loan. After tax, it comes to about 4.5, 5% max. Education loan after tax comes to about 7% approximately. Okay, so keep in mind before you take a loan, because these loans can affect your assets, these loans can affect your investment and saving capacity. Let us look at the fourth mistake, investing in too many schemes of mutual funds. Recently, in the last couple of months, markets have been going up, and many mutual fund companies have been coming up with many different fund offers, which are known as new fund offers. And many of these funds are actually similar to the ones which are already in the market. So there is nothing new which they are offering you. But what happens? We get caught by a lot of advertising which happens. You know, Problem of having too many schemes is when you have too many schemes in your portfolio, one is very difficult to analyze which one is good, which one is not good. You have to remove so much time to analyze them. Second, most schemes will be similar. Like for example, there are categories like a large cap. Large cap means they'll invest only in the top 100 companies. So you may have a lot of schemes which are almost similar, but the names are different. So it doesn't make sense to have so many schemes if they're doing the same thing. Diversification loses a meaning. What is the meaning of diversification? Diversification means you're not putting your money only in one particular asset or only in one particular investment, but you're putting your money in three or four or five different investments. If all of them are doing the same thing, are putting the money in the same shares or same bonds, then it is not called diversification. Okay, so don't buy too many schemes. Why are people buying? Because they feel that, okay, one is there is lack of proper knowledge, because they feel that more the merrier. If I have 15 schemes, 2 may not do well, 13 may do well, I'm better off that way. That could be one of the reasons. Second reason, recently what has happened is that a lot of uh, media, internet, lot of data is being passed on to us through various channels of WhatsApp, social media, etc. And people get confused. They get carried away by returns, what are being shown in the uh, advertising that they come across. So that is one another way which is attracting a lot of people into buying these funds. Some of them are sold as top rated funds, the best five funds in the last 1 year, 2 years, etc. But remember that your requirement may be different. So don't get carried away by what the media is telling you, what the internet is telling you, what WhatsApp is telling you. Try and figure out what your requirements are. Okay. Buying every new scheme which is coming may not make sense to you. Okay, because you're losing your diversification purpose. What are the other effects that can affect negatively on your overall portfolio? There could be low performance among many schemes because most of them are similar. So it could bring down the entire return of your portfolio. Of course, we discussed that it's very difficult to manage so many schemes. And when you have so many schemes, of course, you might get fed up and you might even give up even managing looking at the schemes because there's so much for you to look at. Many people buy schemes and they sell also on the fly. Quickly they just try to cash in whatever profits they are earning, but they don't keep in mind that there are a lot of tax implication also which comes in. If you sell it before 1 year, there is a 15% tax to be paid in equity funds. Okay, so getting in and out of schemes also because you have too many schemes may also not make sense. So keep in mind, don't go into too many schemes. I will come to the next future slide where I will explain you how to actually identify so that you don't actually end up buying many schemes. Some of the great investors have said idea of excessive diversification is madness. Wide diversification, which necessarily includes investment in different businesses, only guarantee ordinary results. And the second quote is wide diversification is only required when investors do not understand what they're doing. Okay, so don't have too many schemes in your portfolio, it might not help you. Let me give you some basic idea of how to select schemes so that you can avoid getting into too many schemes. The shares universe is divided into four categories based on the value of the shares or market capitalization. Market capitalization basically means you can search this word later on in Google. Market capitalization means share value into number of shares of the company which are available in the market. So today, if you see, Reliance Industries is the biggest company in India. Approximately current share value is around 2000, 2200 one share, multiplied by whatever number of shares they have in the market. Total value comes to about 12 lakh crores. So that's the biggest company, that's the number one company. Then you have a Hindustan Unilever, you have Infosys, you have Mahindras, you have Kotak Bank, you have HDFC Bank. These are all part of the top 100 big companies. These are called as large caps. Okay. Now I can give you an analogy. How do you look at large caps? What kind of stability they bring you? Large caps can be reflective of, let us say, Bollywood actors. When a producer wants to make a movie, he wants to be very, very sure he is going in the right direction. And he wants the very, very old, popular, bankable stars, stars who have actually earned a lot of, what you can say, popularity in with the masses. And because they've been there for so many years and, they've been able to deliver results, somebody like an Amitabh Bachchan or a Shah Rukh Khan, so you could categorize them as large caps. These are why I'm giving an analogy so you can understand that large cap basically means companies which have been there for 25, 30, 40, 50 years, 80 years. A Hindustan Unilever is like a 70, 80-year-old company. HDFC Bank is like a 30, 35-year-old company. Similarly, Mahindra is like a 50-year-old company. So they are all part of the large cap universe. Mutual funds, which are known as large cap, invest only in these 100 stocks. They will not go outside the 100, which means they will only look at the best top companies. They will not go outside that. So if you have 3, 4 schemes of large cap, doesn't make sense. Have 1 or 2 schemes of this category. Similarly, mid cap would mean next generation of actors who've been there for last 10, 12 years, who have made some mark and who can become big like the stars which are shown in the first row. Maybe in the couple of years they will reach there. So these are like mid caps. Mid caps means that 101st biggest stock to 250th stock in terms of value. So if you are an investor who wants to take a little more risk, you can look at mid cap. Again, look at 1 or 2 schemes. Don't go into 3, 4, 5 schemes under this category. A small cap would mean that small company started about couple of years back. High risk, they might do well, they might not do well, but given a chance for a longer period of 8, 10, 12 years, they might do well in the long term. They might not do well in the next 5, 10 years. In 5, 10 years, these large cap can do well because they are bankable stars, they're bankable, they're good companies, they have shown, they have outperformed, they've been there for so many years, their capacity is huge, they can absorb small, minor uh, disruptions like the one which happened last year. Small caps cannot handle disruptions like the one which happened last year. They get affected very fast. So if you're an investor who's having a lower risk, doesn't want to take very high risk, you can look at the first category, look at 1 or 2 schemes. If you're an investor which is having a little bit higher risk, have at least 10, 15 years ahead, you can also look at this category. If you're a very young investor who's got about 20, 25 years ahead, 15, 25 years ahead, you can also give a small allocation to this category. But before you enter, look at your risk profile, understand your risk that you can take, and then enter. And finally, you have one more category called flexi cap. What is flexi? Is flexible. So you may have a producer who might make a movie like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum by taking the Amitabh Bachchan from the large cap. He might take a Shah Rukh. He might take a Shah Rukh also from large cap. He might take a Hrithik Roshan who was a mid cap that time. Okay, today he is a large cap. So flexi cap is a mixture of some of large, some of mid, some of small. This is just to give an analogy of how mutual funds work. You know, best companies, top 100, picking up something from the middle and picking up something from the high risk also. That forms a flexi cap. So when you look at investing in mutual funds, don't go into too many schemes. You can pick and choose 1 or 2 from each of this category, but don't go too large. The small cap is for those who have very high risk. If you are somebody who is not having too much of a risk, who can take little risk, large and mid caps ideally, or large and flexi cap should ideally take care. Don't get into mid or small cap if you don't want to take a very high risk. Okay, so now how do you reduce your, or how do you decide that, oh, I don't want to build too many schemes? So what is the solution? I gave you one solution, which is within the categories, take 1 or 2 schemes at the max. Don't get into too many similar schemes. A second option for you is to look at index funds. What are index funds? Index funds basically means they will invest in a defined benchmark. Sensex, you all have heard of Sensex. What is Sensex? Sensex only consists of 30 stocks, the top 30 companies. So there are mutual funds who will call themselves as Sensex Index Mutual Fund. If you invest there, you will get a return what Sensex will give you. It will only invest in top 30 companies. So you need not buy one or two more Sensex funds. You can just buy one Sensex fund. It takes care of whatever the return the Sensex market gives you. You will get that. If you want to buy Nifty 50 stocks, the top 50, you can buy a Nifty index. Nifty index will only invest in top 50. It will not go outside that. There is one more category called Nifty Next 50, means 51st to 100th large company. So what these index funds do is they will only buy stocks from that category only and in the same proportion. Okay. So these are also called as passive funds. Passive funds. These are all, so these can be one of the solution to you. One was the earlier one which I told you that you can look at one of the funds from these categories. Second could be also you can look at a Sensex fund or a Nifty fund or a category of these funds. So you don't have to keep changing funds because whatever this particular benchmark return gives you, you will get that return in your portfolio. So this is how you can avoid getting into too many schemes. Okay. This is just to give you an idea of Sensex actually covers major part of the sectors. It covers IT companies around 16%, banking and financial services 38%, power, telecom, cement, construction. It covers all, so this is Nifty, sorry. It covers most of the sectors. Okay, so Sensex consists of all these top companies. You can see the names here: ITC, Bajaj Finance, SBI, ICICI Bank, Reliance. Nifty will consist of all these 30 plus they have additional 20 companies. Okay, so if you don't want to keep buying too many companies, look at a Sensex, look at a Nifty index fund, or within the categories you can buy a large cap, you can buy a mid cap, you can buy a flexi cap, depending on your risk taking ability. What is the last mistake that I want to highlight? And this is a major mistake which many people commit: not taking risk at all, not taking risk to counter inflation. Inflation basically means every year prices are increasing. Are your returns increasing at the same rate? No. Okay, so biggest risk that you would face is not taking a risk at all. This is giving you a 30-year inflation chart. Look at a simple commodities like rice. In 30 years, the price of rice has grown by 8 times. Milk has grown by almost 9 times. Okay. Cooking gas has grown by almost 12 times. Refrigerator prices may not be so much, twice. Look at petrol, almost 7 times. So prices are increasing every year, and over the next 10 years, if you look at a longer period of 10 years, then you will see frightening things like twice increase, thrice increase, 3 times, 4 times. So what are the returns you're getting nowadays in your bank FDs, in your post office savings? You get about 5 to 6% max. What is the inflation going on currently? Current inflation is going on around approximately 6%, 5 to 6%. So your FDs are giving you 6%. I have not calculated the tax here. FDs are taxable. Post office instruments are taxable. If you deduct the tax, then you're actually earning less than inflation. So if you're earning less than inflation, you can't beat inflation. So if you can't take a risk, if you're not taking a risk, your money power will only reduce because prices will go up. Your money will not be able to catch up with the prices. So you'll have to take a little bit of risk. Let me give you an example. Let us say you want to plan for kids' education. You want to plan 10 lakh rupees after 10 years. Educational expenses are actually growing at about 10% every year. So today's 10 lakhs after 10 years might cost you 25 lakh 93,000. Okay. Now, to achieve that target of 25 lakhs, you have three options. One option is to look at an FD which gives you 5.5%. If you invest in an FD every month for 10 years, you will have to invest 16,000. If you invest in PPF, which gives you around 7.4%, you have to invest 14,000. And if you invest in equity, which gives you around 12% return over 10 years, you have to invest 11,000. So in the long run, to beat inflation, if you invest in equity, you have to invest less amount. But if you want to invest, don't want to take a risk, want to be very, very safe, you will have to invest a higher amount. So keep that in mind. For long-term goals, equity is better because it becomes stable over long term. Returns are better. That's why you have to invest lesser amount of money to earn a higher amount of return. Let me show you one more chart which will actually clarify what I'm talking about. This is a Sensex chart from 1979. This actually tells you that if you had invested here in Sensex in a 1 year scenario, 2 year scenario, 3 year scenario, how many times the market would be negative? Okay, so let us talk about first 1 year period. In a 1 year period over 41 years, 13 times market would have been negative. 13 times. Okay, for rest of the times market was positive. In a 3 year period, 7 times market was negative, 39 times market was positive. In a 7 year period, 2 times market was negative, 37 times it was positive. In a 10-year period, just once market was negative, 32 times it was positive. Just once. Otherwise, every year there have been returns. In a 15-year period, market was never negative, zero. 20 years never negative, 30 years never negative. Which means the longer you invest in equity, there is zero risk. There is zero risk. So when you're investing in equity, you want to take a risk, invest in equity for longer periods so that the risk is avoided. There is no risk. But if you don't invest just because you want to be very safe, then you're taking a very big risk because you'll not be able to beat inflation. Okay. So these were the five points that I wanted to cover. First one which I wanted to cover was that start early in life so that you get the benefit of compounding. Second point that we covered was understand loans, get into good loans, not into bad loans. Third was don't keep buying many schemes in your portfolio, others will be piling up many schemes in your portfolio. Fourth point that we mentioned was that take a risk, because if you don't take a risk, you will not be able to earn inflation beating returns. Okay. And fifth point was that don't invest for the long term in real estate as an asset class, because as a second home, because that might not actually generate that much return for you. Okay, so these were the 5 points.